Welcome to Pixel Opinions review for Captain Marvel, the latest entry in the ever-growing Marvel Cinematic Universe. So we just saw it last night. We waited a little bit, let things kind of simmer before we started talking about it. Anybody want to start off with anything?
Adding heroes is messy.
It sure is. It sure is, especially when you're adding them like after everything's already happened. Yeah. But you want to insert them into Endgame, basically, because that's what this is really about: is getting Captain Marvel into the last part of the Avengers movies. And yeah, it's the last part, so it's a little tricky trying to get her in there.
Prequels can be tough like that.
I mean, okay, but what about the movie itself?
I mean, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I really can't complain about it too much. It felt like an origin story, like almost all of them. It had the same overarcs. But I think they did a decent job with it.
Can I pose you guys a question?
Sure.
Did you guys at any point feel that the movie was too dark? And I don't mean from like a tone feel. Like, there was so many scenes that were in darker lit areas. Did you, like, I've never really found that to be an issue with Marvel movies or any movies really. And there was a couple times in the theater yesterday where I was like, I want to see what's going on. It's too dark.
Yeah. I mean, that might have also been the theater we were going to. But
no, but we go to the same theater for everything.
Yeah.
But I will say that, like, the one time I really noticed it is when she was trying out the colors with her gadget.
Oh, thing. Yeah. You couldn't really see
and they were standing, like, right outside rather than inside where there was some light, so you couldn't even really see the thing. Like, it's like, take a couple steps back, and this scene will be that much better, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I know it's a small complaint, and it's not going to make or break, but... You know, with action movies, and there were a couple action sequences near the beginning on a different planet, I thought, okay, well, that's going to be tonal to that planet. Yeah. But then later on, there was a lot of other fight scenes that were, like, in dark corridors or at nighttime, and a lot of it felt really dark. Yeah. And it made it tough to see what was going on some of the times. And with a movie like this... You know, I hate always asking in the Marvel reviews, what'd you think of the CGI? Because at this point, they've got that down. But it felt like in this, they took away from it because they put like a dark tint to everything and you couldn't see it.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree with that. And yeah, like obviously CGI was good, but it didn't really stand out this time. Like, no. It's not something that I can say, oh, the CGI was amazing, like, you should watch this movie for it. And I could have said that about some of the other ones. In this case, it's like, yeah, it doesn't take anything away, because it looks natural, right? But it doesn't really, like, it's not why you want to go and see it.
Do you think that's a symptom of, in so many movies prior, they raised the bar, that eventually you're not going to be able to raise that bar anymore?
I think it was partially raising the bar, but it's also partially how flashy some of the other stuff was. This movie wasn't nearly as flashy as I thought it would be, considering the hero is someone who shoots lasers out of her hands, right? Photons. Whatever.
It's Mega Man. Oh, no, that was a plasma rifle?
Plasma blaster, yeah.
Either way.
But it actually...
Proton blaster. Sorry.
It actually felt a little bit keyed back in many aspects from other movies. In my opinion.
All right, so what about casting? Any particular roles that really stood out or didn't?
You have the characters that already were there, like Nick Fury.
Like Jude Law, I thought was did the job of the mentor.
Was he in another superhero movie recently? I feel like he was.
He was in another movie recently. I don't know if it was a superhero movie, but... and I mean, Brie Larson did a good job as...
I don't think it would be fair if I commented on Brie Larson, because I'm going to say she did fantastic no matter what.
Because you love her.
The movie could have been 2 hours of her sitting in a chair, and I would have watched it.
You would have watched it,
yeah. But, I mean, other than that, nobody really stood out, but at the same time, nobody really stood out in a good or a bad way. Like, everybody did their job just fine. There was no issues. You know, one thing I kind of seem to always harp on is child actors in these movies. And I thought that, I don't remember her name, but the daughter of her best friend was well done.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so... it just feels like this whole movie, and it's almost thematic to what I feel of the movie overall, was just very tepid. They didn't raise the bar like Marvel's been doing lately, but they didn't it almost felt like, this is the Marvel formula, we're now going to paint by numbers, here's your movie. And, that's not bad because there's nothing really lacking. But at the same time, you got this mentality of every time they raise the bar, raise the bar, and then this one was just kind of
for casting us. A little bit of a side note: I don't know who it was because I didn't look it up yet, but the one Skrull character actually was very entertaining.
I actually really liked the Skrull as the villains for this movie.
Like, how many times I heard you laughing, like you would say something and you'd laugh. What?
I mean, of course, the Marvel Universe already had Loki, so they've already had some good villains.
Yes.
But a lot of the times the villains are just there to be villains. They're not exactly entertaining. They're just there to be a foil for the enemies. But in this case, the Skrull were highly entertaining. Like, I thought they were really well done. They didn't seem like the most challenging of villains.
I felt that they didn't really utilize their shape-shifting very much.
Yeah.
They only did it at the beginning, and then it kind of went from there.
I feel like they got more camera time just in their native forms than in any sort of transmutation, which, that's fine. It sets up who they are, and it shows that they have the ability. But I thought, like, going into it, I thought there's going to be a lot more mystery moments where we're trying to figure out, like, who might be a shape-shifted Skrull, and
they made it super obvious.
They made it super obvious.
A few times that it came up.
Yeah. They definitely could have done a better job with using their one great power. Right?
Yeah.
They aren't too threatening to Captain Marvel, obviously.
Yeah.
But they do have a really cool ability, but we're not going to use it.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to touch on is that it's very 90s influenced. There's a lot of... Because obviously it took place in 1995, right? But just like seeing all the throwbacks, they did the soundtrack perfectly for the era. I really like that, and I find it a little odd that it's taking place so early before the Avengers, like 95. There's a big gap there between that and Avengers, but if you can look at the movie in a vacuum, I thought that it was nice to have a little bit more... like, we grew up with the 90s, obviously, but now it's a little, like, obviously, we're talking like 20 years ago, right? So, at the same time, now it's like, we're going to actually start to see the 90s as, like, a thematic throwback era. And, some of the cameos, some of the little Easter eggs and stuff were really well done. I really enjoyed that part of it.
I thought it was kind of nice just seeing it because most of the movies have at least been modern, with, like, all the high-tech stuff, so even, like, seeming past modern, or highly futuristic with all the space stuff. So it was kind of neat seeing something that's in the past.
Yeah. I mean, it still kind of had space stuff. But yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Like, when she's on Earth, the Earth stuff is in the past, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was nice. It gave them a little bit more freedom than what they normally do. And I am curious why they chose 95, though. Because, again, it's such a big gap between that and the Avengers.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, like, well, what are they doing in between? Are they going to do more movies, maybe even after, that take place in the middle? Are they just going to ignore that? Because that's a bit of a time jump. Right?
I actually think they are going to put a couple movies in between there, especially if they do, I don't know what their plans are for another Captain Marvel movie, but if they do another Captain Marvel movie as a solo, they can put it in between there, right? Because you got to wonder, like, as well, okay, so we know from Avengers that Nick Fury has the ability to call on her, right, with the communicator. Why doesn't he call on her at some point in between? You'd think that some kind of Earth-ending event would have happened in between at some point.
Well, I mean, the other Avengers movies.
But here's the thing. We don't know that he didn't.
No, I know.
Right? Just because the only thing we've seen in the MCU is the, final scene in the previous Avengers, which is not a spoiler. You should have seen it by now. That doesn't mean that there wasn't situations where they called it before and it's just not displayed on the MCU.
Yeah.
And there's also the argument that prior to this issue with, the Avengers movie, which feels like we're really taking this out of the vacuum of the Captain Marvel movie itself. But prior to that, there was always an abundance of the heroes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there was always the Avengers. There was always somebody there to save the day. So it's like, well, we don't necessarily need to call her because we have people that are taking care of it. But now, with the whole Thanos thing, it's like, well, our resources are limited, and this would definitely classify as an emergency situation.
Yeah.
So, but that, again, that's getting out beyond this movie itself. Subtle thing, and it's really not anything to do with the movie, but might as well stick with that as we're at it. I really liked how they adjusted the Marvel intro logo prior to the movie as a dedication to Stan Lee, which I thought was really nice.
Classy.
You had all of his cameos, and I guess he did have time to record one for this before, unfortunately he passed away. But I thought that was a nice little touch, too.
For sure.
Anything else you guys want to touch on? Like the actual plot itself? It was pretty...
predictable.
It was pretty predictable. It was pretty point A to point B. There really wasn't a lot for... twists, swerves at this point are not really catching anyone by surprise.
No, they were.
But what'd you think? Like,
I didn't think it was one of the things that really stood out, but I did think it was nice the way it had the character interactions, the way it introduced characters, especially Captain Marvel, of course. And I thought it was one of the better origin stories, just because it was sort of told backwards in many ways, because she already had her powers, basically.
It wasn't nearly as awkward, and I know I mentioned this to Amanda, but like when she used her powers, because she had already trained to fight for so many years, she knew how to fight. Yeah, okay, there was a couple moments where she was like, oh, wait, I can do this. But it wasn't like, you watch something like Spider-Man and he's teetering over the edge of the building and wondering if he can jump off. She knew she could do it, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't nearly as awkward for sure as a origin.
And I find that better for pacing, because it means that you can have action at any point rather than basically having all the action in the last chunk of the movie and very little in the first part.
Yeah, and if you're going more into origins with like more flashback scenarios, you can splice them in at any point, and you can control the pacing a lot better. So, I didn't really think about it prior to, but that's a very good point for the origin part of it. But at this point, going into a Marvel movie, I don't even expect an origin story. Even if I don't know who the character beforehand, it's like there's so many of them.
They're also so established, right? Like they have a universe built now with all these heroes and all these movies and all these characters that it's almost a little bit easier to throw in another character. Not that it came out without some mess, because I still think it disrupts some of the timeline, but it's still it's easy to work in overall.
We'll have to talk about that after we stop recording.
Yes.
I don't think there's much to say at this point. We've done all the Marvel movies, so might as well just go to final thoughts. Josh?
I'm going to go with a 7 out of 10. I enjoyed the movie. I would definitely go see it again. But is it, the top echelon of the Marvel movies? No. Is it the bottom? No. Kind of in the middle,
Yeah. I'm going 8 out of 10. I thought it was a really good way to introduce her. I really liked her personality. I think she's going to be a great addition to the team.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. But that's, again, going beyond the vacuum of the movie.
Yeah. But as the purpose of the movie, I thought they did that perfectly well. And I really liked her personality. I really liked the Skrulls as her villain for the movie. Yes, it didn't really stand out. I thought they could have done more with her sort of sassy personality.
That was fantastic. Some of her interactions with Fury were great.
Yeah. And that just gives me so much hope and makes her really likable right out the gate. And that can sometimes be a hard thing, is making someone likable that quickly.
I didn't even need to like her out of the gate.
You liked her before.
She wasn't even at the starting line, and I was already liking her.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. It wasn't one of the best movies for me, but I thought it was one of the really good Marvel ones.
has Alex ever had the highest score out of all of us? He's usually
Maybe
the hardest critic.
But yeah, he usually is.
I'm taking that one this time. I'm giving this movie a 6 out of 10.
Oh, wow, okay.
This movie is just a little above average. You know, with things that are, you know, the things that are keeping it above are things like, you know, her interactions with it, the pacing of the movie. But there's so many things that, to me, I'm still not 100% sure if it's because of the comparison to the other movies and how they've raised the bar, but things like taking away the full view of, like, the combat by making it so dark. You know, the very predictable plots that are almost becoming paint by numbers, aside from, like, the Avengers, which, you know, was different, but, like, a lot of these are starting to feel very similar to one another. And again, I don't know if that's necessarily a victim of the comparison or the movie itself.
Yeah.
But, you know, in the theater, there was a few parts where I was bored, right? And, you know, that again, I think, is my expectation. It's still a good movie, but it's just good. You know, it's just above average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's our review for Captain Marvel, I guess.
If you agree with us, disagree with us, let us know. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of the movie or what you thought of the character going into the overarching MCU. And until next time, live in the real world, play in a pixel one.
Hey, did you like that video? If you did, be sure to let us know by clicking the like button and leaving a comment. If you want to be first in line for any new content, be sure to subscribe to our channel and then hit up our Facebook page. The link's in the description below to see what's coming up next.
Aren't you the cutest little thing? Aren't you cute? And what's your name, huh?
Fury.
What's cute? I'll be back.